So everyone knows you got to use reverb and compression to get that pro upfront vocal sound with the right balance of emotion. What if I told you that you're not getting the most out of your vocal when it comes to using things like reverb and delay? You might have the right plugins, you might have a great vocal performance and even a great mix, but if you're not employing this trick, you're not getting the most out of your vocal. You're not gonna be able to convey the emotion of that performance to the listener in your mix. So let's check out some of the tips and tricks I have regarding reverb and delay in your mix. Now, if you're wanting to learn how to use reverb and delay in general, I have some playlists mixing for beginners on my channel that you can check out. I also have a free guide called the Home Studio Toolbox, which gives you a bunch of free tools, including reverb and delay plugins to help you use in your mix for free. So check out those in the description box. Now, let me get into my mix and describe what I'm talking about when it comes to these tips and tricks. So here's a mix of a song. It has a vocal performance over some keys and pianos. I'll just play a couple minutes of it. It's just a cover here, and I'll give you an idea of what that sounds like. And
some real big mistakes, but you make the worst one look fine. I should have known it was strange.
So what are the tips and tricks I'm applying? Well, a lot of people do not realize that you need to actually use automation, not just on the volume of your vocal, but also on the mix amount of your reverb and delay plugins. I'll show you what I mean here. So here's my vocal chain. I know you can use sends for reverb and delay. So that just means in your DAW, sending the track to a reverb or delay aux track. But in Reaper, you can also put the reverb or delay plugins straight on the track, which is the way I like to do it. It helps me keep track of what's going on. And then you can automate those plugins using the trim read feature. So I have two plugins going on: the CLA Epic Stereo, which is a mix of delay and reverbs. And I'm using Valhalla Supermassive, which is a free plugin, which is a free reverb plugin. So if I go to my trim read here, not only can you control the track volume here, if I look at the automation tab, I have a bunch of automation moves regarding the volume of my vocal. As everything sort of climaxes and the synths and pianos get louder, I want the vocal to also get louder, but also I want the reverb and delay amounts to be just right for each part of the song. So if I go to my Valhalla Supermassive, there's a mix control there. And if I go to CLA Epic Stereo, there's a mix control there as well. So you can see I've also made moves regarding the mix knob on my CLA Epic Stereo. What the mix knob does is if it's at 100%, the plugin's fully all the way in. If it's at 50%, there's only half of the volume of that plugin working on the track itself mixed into the final track. So for example, if I was able to bypass the Valhalla Supermassive and CLA Epic, that would be the mix knob at 0 because the plugin isn't doing anything. So completely dry, it would sound like this.
Real big mistakes, but you make the worst one look fine. I should.
But I don't want a completely dry vocal. So I'm going to put those plugins back on, but I don't want those plugins going full force. I want to control when they're going to be sounding more reverby and delay-y. So you'll notice here at the very intro,
I hate to give the satisfaction asking how you doing now. How's the castle built?
Because it's very restrained, it's very intimate. I don't want this giant reverb around the vocal. We don't need that yet. So I have the mixed Valhalla Supermassive here down at 29%. It's very, very low and slowly building in. Same thing with the CLA Epic. I have it real low. And this is a trick that mix engineers use all the time. If you watch CLA, he always talks about adjusting the mix knobs on his reverb on his console as the track goes along. If you talk about producers like Jack Antonoff, he talks about how you can modify the emotion of the track by either increasing the amount of reverb, adding doubles to the vocal plugin. So it's not just about throwing a reverb on and leaving it, but adjusting it throughout the track to increase the emotion. So as I go through the track here and it continues to build, I add in the CLA Epic more and more.
I see the parties and the diamonds. Sometimes when I close my eyes, 6 months of torture you sold as some forbidden.
So you can see it's starting to get more eerie there. And then I really kind of crank this Valhalla Supermassive and more as we get into the pre-chorus. The vocal's getting more intense. The vocalist is getting more into it.
Made some real big mistakes, but you make the worst one look fine.
And I'm contrasting a couple different reverbs here. And this is another trick that Chris Lord Algae loves to use, is a CLA Epic Stereo is a very filtered reverb. It's very dark and it's kind of surrounding the vocal. And then the Valhalla Supermassive has a lot of top end, giving it sort of that more airy reverb sound. And together, through the automation, it's giving me one cohesive vocal sound.
But you make the worst one look fine. I should have known it was strange. You only come out at night.
Now you turn down the CLA Epic here slightly during this vocal part because it got much, much louder. I didn't want this burst of reverb to come out. I wanted it to sound consistent. But as we get into the swell, it's when I really started to crank the reverb and delay plugins.
Parts as you sunk your teeth into me.
Now that we got to the part where the instruments drop out here, I have a little bit going on. You can hear a little bit in the background, but when we get to this final line, I cut both the reverb and delay entirely.
Dream crusher, bleeding me dry like a damn vampire.
I'm going to show you what this vocal would have sounded like if I would have left the same amount of reverb and delay in. The results are pretty shocking. So let me go to automation here, and let me put the reverb back in during this part. It would have totally ruined the section. So let me do that here. Here's what it would have sounded like.
Dream crusher, bleeding me dry like a damn vampire.
Yeah, there's something cool about it, but it's not as intimate as a completely dry vocal. Let me undo all those automation movements there.
Bleeding me dry like a damn vampire.
It's just direct. It's in your face when I got rid of those the reverb amount. Same thing as when the vocal was swelling. If I would have just left the reverb and delay down, it wouldn't feel as epic against the other tracks. Just feels slightly dry. So let me undo that. And I could have even probably gone a little more overboard with this. You don't want too much wash of reverb in your track, obviously. And so it just works perfectly to add that extra dimension to the track. Obviously, you can go overboard with this and add in way too much reverb during some sections and not enough, reducing the cohesiveness of the track. You don't want to confuse your listener with how you're using ambience such as reverb and delay. You want it to be strategic, you want it to be subtle, and you want it to work in context with the track. Don't suck all the reverb and delay out during the most epic part of the track where we have all these instruments going on, everything's supposed to sound big. Just like at the end there, I don't want to add in all the reverb and delay when it's supposed to be so super intimate and close in, because those can really affect how the listener is perceiving what's going on in the track. For example, in the start, if I had a bunch of reverb and delay going on,
to give the satisfaction, asking how you do.
There's nowhere for it to go. There's nowhere for the vocal to breathe and move into something bigger or grander. But when I back it off,
To give the satisfaction.
I can slowly add it in back into the track.
I see the parties and the diamonds. Sometimes when I close my eyes, 6 months of toil.
And then finally, during the last part, I can really put it on full gear here.
You sold me for parts. You sunk your teeth into me.
You don't have to just do this with the vocal. You could do it with the instruments as well. With the strings, you could have the reverb increase as the strings go along in a more impactful section, making the room sound bigger. It's all about what you're trying to get the listener to feel and what works best for the track. So hopefully that was some helpful tips regarding reverb and delay automation. Like I said, like and subscribe to the channel if you want more tips like this. Pick up the Home Studio Toolbox. I've got a bunch of free plugins there that's going to help you along in your home studio journey. I thank you so much for watching. Anyways, I will see you guys next time.